and welcome to the virtual edition of our year-round screening series, Film Independent Presents, and to this Q&A for the new documentary, The Penny Black by Joe Saunders. I'm Jenn Wilson, Senior Programmer for Film Independent. Thank you to our wonderful screening partners, Vision Media, who make it possible for us to screen films for our members virtually. And now please welcome today's guests from The Penny Black, Director Joe Saunders and producer Alex Greer. Welcome.
Thank you.
Hello.
Joe, I haven't seen you in a few years. We met back when you had was it your first film in LA Film Festival?
It was my first feature doc. Billy Mize, The Bakersfield Sound. Yeah, and Alex actually worked on that too. He was a co-producer.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, it's been a while. We were working on this.
I would occasionally talk to him while we were both out there smoking. He'd start to talk in this heavily Russian accent about how he has something that's worth a lot of money. He comes back up to my apartment a couple minutes later, just brings in a duffel bag. If I could hold on to it for him for a couple of weeks while he was out of town, that'd be great.
I know his previous address.
And you don't have his last name?
No.
And you said he was Russian, right?
Penny blacks could be worth up to 30,000 pounds. Who knows what else is in here then? There's also this article, one of these penny blacks being stolen from a collector.
This is not just a little stamp collection. There's more to this. It's like you got all the puzzle pieces and you know you have all the pieces. How do you put them together?
Like towards the end of Billy Mize, I think after it had screened I think it was after Los Angeles Film Festival that we first started shooting this.
Right after though, like we went right into it.
Okay. Yeah. I think Joe, that I was with you at the filmmaker retreat for LA Film Festival that year, and you told me about Will and that this was going to be your next film when you were
really?
at the festival. Is that possible that you did?
It is possible. I mean, yeah, maybe it was just before the festival that it was definitely after we had like locked Billy, but maybe it was before the screening. So yeah, that's totally possible.
So we, Film Independent's a membership organization with a lot of members that are filmmakers and aspiring filmmakers. So I usually like to start this Q&A out with a little bit about the background of the filmmakers that we're talking to. So starting with Joe, you want to talk about just what's been your journey? How'd you become a filmmaker?
Sure. I always wanted to do film. I knew I wanted to make movies. And so I went to Southern Methodist University undergrad and majored in film, which I thought was crazy at the time that you could actually major in like film. But it was a perfect fit. I absolutely loved it. And after that, I took an internship at NFL Films in Philadelphia and National Football League films, and ended up getting a job there and worked there for 9 years and loved it. It was a great education in documentary filmmaking, which was something that I never was really overly interested in. I was a fan of Joe Dante and Zemeckis and Spielberg and that kind of like 80s, fantastic niche. And, but I fell in love with docs there and won an Emmy for this short documentary I did on a bar in South Philadelphia. And I saw myself easily getting stuck doing little short docs on football players. And I wasn't really interested in that as a career. So I left and went to Columbia Film School in the master's program to get back into narrative filmmaking, which seems like a very expensive way to do that. But I while I was there, I met a lot of people that I work with today, including Alex Greer. And we went out and shot an independent fiction narrative film, starring Pedro Pascal, actually, his first feature film. And then I got pulled back into docs because it's just easier to get them off the ground. You need fewer people and they cost a lot less. And I just kept doing that. So I did Billy Mize, The Bakersfield Sound, and then I did this doc series called Coach Snoop about Snoop Dogg coaching inner city youth football. He has a whole league actually in the Los Angeles area. And and then was doing this in the meantime. So it's been a long random journey. Now I'm doing animation. Now I'm involved in animated films, but yeah, so that brings me to now.
Thank you for spending that money at Columbia. They really need it. They were just going down the tubes
I know
without that. So
Yeah,
somebody
and
should make a
it progressed
documentary.
my career exponentially. I came out here and people were like, "Oh, Columbia, yes, definitely come work for us."
I'm saying that because I myself owe more money for graduate school than I'll possibly pay off in my life.
Yeah.
Thanks, Chapman University. Alex, tell us about your student debt.
Yeah, I went to Columbia University as an undergrad, so it was quite the bill. I was very fortunate in that my dad footed it, so I'll thank him here. I don't want to pretend like he didn't, but no, Columbia was a great experience. It took a bit of an existential crisis for me to get into film there. I got kind of not bullied, but swayed into being an econ major for the first 2 years I was there, because that's what everyone in Columbia does. They want to come out and be bankers and make a ton of money. But I had this like come to Jesus moment where I realized I should be following what I was interested in, and film was the thing I was most interested in. So I studied it as an undergrad, but a very ivory tower film studies education. But I was lucky enough to get introduced to Joe right when I graduated, and I hopped on his movie as the first professional production I had worked on. And I think I was eventually billed as a camera assistant. Are you smirking at the word professional production?
Professional production, yeah. But anyway, you didn't know any better.
I didn't know. I actually had no idea. And after I came off of that shoot, I went and PA'd around town in LA, and none of it was nearly as fun. I did big commercials and bigger things where you're not allowed, PAs aren't allowed to sit with the actors. And I was miserable. So miserable that I actually stepped in front of the camera. I had a brief detour into acting as a career. And I did that for about 3 or 4 years until Joe was finishing up Billy Mize and the Bakersfield Sounds. We were friends by this point, and he took a chance on me and gave me a really good opportunity to come on as a post-production supervisor. And then he discovered this excellent tin of footage in his grandfather's basement. And we went back into editing the film and went back into fundraising, and I took on more responsibility, and then became a co-producer on it. And then Penny Black came along while we were doing that, and I just have continued learning and making with Joe.
That's an excellent film, by the way. I'm sorry I didn't actually mention the title when I mentioned your former documentary, Billy Mize and the Bakersfield Sound. What can people watch that online? Is it rentable or streamable?
It's on Vimeo. You can rent it on Vimeo. Okay. I just took the rights back from the distributor that wasn't doing much with it, so I took them back, and I'm about to plan something else with a release of new music as well. So
at the start of this film, there's a caption that says something about you heard Will tell this story about the stamps collection and how he ended up with it at a dinner party. Were the two tell that story again? Were the two of you at this dinner party and heard Will tell the story?
Yeah. So Alex knows Will through his roommate in college, and I know Will through Alex. So Alex had invited me to this dinner or brunch. I forget what it was. It was some kind of gathering where food was involved. And everybody was talking about what they did that weekend. And everybody had really, kind of sad excuses for a weekend. I watched a movie, Alex did nothing. And Will brings up this ridiculous story about how his neighbor dropped off a $2 million stamp collection and, is coming back in 2 weeks for it. And, coming off of Billy Mize Bakersfield Sound, looking for a new project, I was like, well, that sounds interesting. Either this guy is lying and, we go and film it and see how far he'll go, because it didn't sound like he was on the up and up, or he's telling the truth. And this is a really interesting story. But also, while we were thinking that, we still expected the neighbor to come back in a week. That was still supposed to happen at that point. So we thought this was just going to be a short little, isn't LA strange? And it's
so a short doc then?
yeah, just something just small. And I was hoping he would come back and then we'd interview him and just be like, what happened? Why did you give these stamps to Will? And then just kind of, wrap it up in a nice bow, something we could do in the weekend. Because Billy Mize also took a few years to do. And I was looking for something short that I could just complete over a very, very short amount of time. And this was not that.
So at a certain point in this, it seems that you both start to suspect that Will might not be quite on the up and up. I think the first time I noticed it in the film is when somebody does a zoom close-up shot of one of the stamp books inside a backpack. And that sort of gives you the feeling, oh, are the filmmakers having some questions about Will? So I'm just wondering, when for you during the filmmaking process did you start to feel like Will might not be telling the truth about what's going on with the stamps?
Yeah. I always believed him. Like, and you watch, looking back at it, there's so many clues as to why you shouldn't be believing him. And it's pretty obvious to people who watch it now. Just some people automatic reaction is, I don't trust this guy, but I didn't have that immediately. Maybe that's just the difference of being in person and watching someone on TV or in a film. But I trusted him as we were going along, and he was telling me these outlandish stories one after another. His neighbor's Russian, he's disappeared, there's these strange people lurking around his apartment now, like all these things I trusted and believed. His dad's a con man. These are the things that happened when he was little, like, again, sensational, outlandish things, but I believed him. It wasn't until the stamp book went missing that Alex and I really stepped back and we were like, wait a minute, like, how does this happen? And he doesn't know. And what else isn't he telling us? And then we went back through all the footage and started finding all these examples of things that we didn't really have concrete evidence about that he could be making up. So we did some background search on his dad. We actually tried to contact the FBI, or we did contact the FBI trying to get case files about that particular, investigation. FBI was not helpful, but we were able to find other things from organizations like Christie's and other auctions that had him on a blacklist because of behavior. And there were other certain things. We knew he was in prison in Britain, and there was articles that you could find. You could just Google his dad's name and you could see that he wasn't the greatest guy in the world. So we figured he's telling the truth about this stuff. We don't know if he's telling the truth about Roman, his neighbor. There's nothing we can Google to like prove that. So we really started questioning everything once that stamp book went missing.
Yeah, I mean, to me, that's one of the most fascinating aspects of this film and any documentary film that you can tell was obviously they set out to make it in a certain way, and then they discover some information that makes it so they can't really make it that way. What were your discussions like about, did you have discussions about, do we keep going forward or not? Because this is not the story that we're going to tell. We were not going to tell the story of our main subject actually stole a book of stamps and sold them.
There was a lot of discussion about what we were filming and how we were going to film it. And subconsciously, there may have been decisions made based on knowing how it would play when we got to the end. But while we were filming, we really didn't know where it was going. We didn't know how we were going to go back and frame it. There was a lot of intentional decisions made in the editing room in terms of like how we're going to share information and because we were ahead of the story at that point. But when we were filming, I think we were just kind of filming. Like, we had certain discussions about stylistic, strategies, but I don't know, Alex, what do you think?
Yeah, no, we were always operating a really like tight tension between wanting the story to happen a certain way and also being open to the fact that it was not going to go whatever way we wanted it to go. Like, we planned very, very carefully as we produced this movie. Like, every shoot we did, we would sketch up all our different ideas of how things could go. And we made sure that we were prepared for all those things, especially for like the dangerous shoots where we thought we would need to be prepared for our safety, or like for, you know, more innocuous shoots where we felt we needed to prepare to get certain shots. But we would always sketch out at every course where we thought the story was going to go. And like without fail, every time we always got a curveball thrown at us and the story would go in a direction that we totally didn't expect. And that would be very frustrating from a production perspective and from like a story perspective in the moment, because, you know, we wanted our plan to happen. But from a capturing an authentic story perspective and what we eventually got on film, it was invaluable, because we got these explosive moments where like even where we had planned just totally got thrown to the wind.
So can I ask, because I think where the movie leaves you with, you're never really sure if Will took the stamps and sold them. Was there ever a definitive answer on that, or was it the film is in the same place where you guys are, you don't really know?
Well, we this is probably a good time to bring Will in if we want, like after we answer this question. But
okay.
We don't know. There's no definitive proof of where the stamps went. We have theories, but yeah, there's no way to know, really. But I think I don't know what happened to the stamps. Like I don't know, and I don't know if I care, because it's such a great mystery, and it allows us to look at the story from so many different new ways. And Will is so good about like being mysterious and like playing that mystery, and I think he kind of loves it too, and we'll find out more in a second. But yeah, I don't know. I just don't. The only thing I know is that Will is really smart and he's very careful, and he was able to keep the other books of stamps and somehow missed just one that happened to be the most valuable stamps. That seems unlike him and very strange. So that's all I can go.
Not to be completely murky.
I want to jump in and say I used to want to find an answer for this, because we get asked it all the time in all the Q&As and all the press and stuff, because it's the burning tension throughout the movie. But I think I've come to a place where like I watched the movie again a few days ago, and Joe, I don't know if you agree with me, but like we left everything on the table as far as the story is shown. Like there's obviously a lot on the editing room floor in order to compress 5 years into an hour and a half. But as far as what we know about where the stamps went missing, like you guys know what we know. And so Joe and I didn't think that we had any place in trying to provide a definitive answer in the movie. And so I don't know if we have any place to provide a definitive answer at this point either. Like it's just a true mystery, and it's really for the audience to decide and debate.
This film reminds me of, I don't know if you guys ever saw My Kid Could Paint That from 2007. Okay, you really should watch it. I'm not going to reveal what happens in it, but essentially there's a little kid painter, a little girl, like 5 years old, who paints these masterpieces. She starts to become really popular, sell a bunch of them. And then probably a quarter of the way through the film, the filmmaker starts to feel that possibly this little kid is not painting these paintings.
Yeah, I remember hearing about this story, yeah.
And I was just wondering if you were inspired as to the structure of your film, if you were sort of trying to let your footage tell you where you were going with this film, or if you were inspired by any other docs you had seen structure-wise.
Structurally, I don't know if Alex, correct me if I'm wrong, because we edited this together. But I don't know if we were looking at the structure of any particular film. I mean, we knew like stylistically we wanted to be something more like Catfish, where it's a kind of, you follow the filmmakers as they discover what's going on, the continuity is happening as you're watching. But but I don't know if we structured it to be like anything. I mean, I was reading a lot of like screenwriting books, and like, I had the cards and different sequences laid out of, this is our act 1, this is our act 2, this is our act 3. But I don't think I was modeling it after anything. Alex, is that?
Yeah, we had tonal inspirations and stylistic inspirations. Obviously, like we drew a lot on noirs when we realized that we were kind of like accidentally making a noir, and we drew like tonally on. We always talked about Catfish and The Imposter, and there was one more that we used as kind of The Ambassador. Yeah, we used that as a reference point. But no, we were trying to fit everything into a classical structure. And then of course, dealing with the issue of our protagonist becoming unreliable, and then needing to insert Joe and I as kind of the guiding post.
Yeah. Well, I mean, one of the things I think, if you want, you can text our guests and have them come on if you want.
Sure.
One of the things that I really liked about this is that it's not far-fetched at all, because I lived in an apartment building in Koreatown across the hall from a Russian drug dealer. In a building filled with a whole lot of characters. And Vadim, who was my Russian neighbor, was a completely wonderful person, not a scary person like Roman. But shortly before I moved, he did end up getting killed in the alley by our building.
Whoa. Was he in a car?
I don't believe so.
Okay.
I never had proof that he was a drug dealer. Hi, Will, by the way. Hi, welcome.
Hey.
I'm talking about my own ex-Russian neighbor, Vadim. But when I was told that he was killed by someone in the alley at like 3 a.m. behind the building across the street, I was like, yeah, that was probably a drug situation or a robbery situation. But anyway, Will, that story was just to say that this story didn't seem far-fetched to me at all, because I lived also in a Los Angeles apartment building full of characters. So the possibility that this happened seemed very real. To me. So Will, catch us
Will
up.
has taken my identity too, by the way.
Yeah, I don't know why that's showing up that way. That's I did nothing to do that.
Yes,
Fair.
and you're supposed to take Will's. It's going to be like a Freaky Friday after this.
That'll be fun. The shower will be interesting.
Will, there's a few moments in this film where you seem not to be loving being followed around by a camera. Can you just talk about what it's like being the subject of a feature doc and the impact that has on your life?
Yeah, so I'm sure that this is the only documentary I've been in, but I'm sure it's different than more kind of documentaries that are shot very, very consistently over a short period of time, certainly. And for me, given the kind of setup of this thing, it really oscillated between being really exciting that anything in my life would even warrant someone with a camera following me, and being like incredibly annoying that I had to like sometimes put days or evenings or whatever on hold because we had to go and shoot something, and I was definitely not the easiest subject in the world to kind of deal with when there were nights like that.
To be fair to Will, we shot for 5 years, so understandable.
Will, what was your reaction to the film when you finally saw the completed project? What was your reaction?
Sure. I mean, first of all, I thought it was, really well done, but it's also like, it's so impossible, right, for me to like look at it objectively, and like there's something also really weird about just like seeing yourself on screen for that long. That was like very kind of unnerving. And the other piece to it too is like these were little kind of like segments of my life, you know, that I was seeing and like I had lived and I have like some recollection of, and they're now being like pieced together into kind of one cohesive doc, which was very, very odd to go and see. Really cool. I thought it was awesome to see it come together, but it was definitely a very surreal and strange experience for me.
Were you surprised that the filmmakers thought that you had possibly sold a book of the missing book of stamps?
No, I think that they had to have gone somewhere, right? And I feel like they'd be irresponsible if they didn't try and, you know, track down what some possibilities would be, right? So I don't.
When they asked you during the filming if you had taken the book of stamps and sold it, did you suspect during the filming that they thought that you might have taken it?
I thought they were just answering out of diligence, I think, more than anything else.
Really though, because I felt like after that shoot, you withdrew quite a bit. I remember that. Remember we had that lunch like a few days later in like Santa Monica or Venice or something, and I apologized for, because usually what would happen is we would talk about what we were going to shoot with Will beforehand. It just, as you know, as you schedule a shoot, we're going to do this, and this time we told Will like there's something that we want to talk to you about, but I'm not, you know, let's not talk about it until we start filming. So, and that was that shoot. And I thought you got a little upset with us, but maybe that was just me being oversensitive.
It's been a while. I mean, like maybe, I don't remember being absolutely not mad at you guys now, right?
What about now, Will? Like, is it a weight off that these stamps are back with Roman and this experience is over with?
It felt really good to go and give those stamps back to Roman. Absolutely. And I think it was, it's fantastic to see this thing like come to life and actually be somewhere. And I think like that's really cool. And certainly I don't mind making sure that like we don't suddenly have to go film something or like, you know, stake out someone's apartment for like several hours at a time or something. So yeah. I mean, I think overall, absolutely. I kind of, you know, in the moment, right, the kind of like inconveniences of doing these things, it seemed like a major kind of inconvenience and hurdle. You probably look back on it though. I mean, like it wasn't, we say like weight off of like my shoulders. I don't know that I was bearing that much of the burden, right, compared to these guys.
Do you feel, after you saw the film, did you feel any differently about your relationship with your dad after you saw the, you know, just the interviews with yourself discussing your dad? And did you sort of question not having answered your dad's email or your relationship with him after that?
Not really. That's kind of just maintained. I don't. I mean, I keep in mind, I've had, even beyond this, I've had a lot of time to deal and process, right, that whole relationship and what that means. More so than just in this film. I mean, this film definitely gave me like a lens to look at that through. But so have like years of therapy, for instance, and just kind of, you know, introspection.
Do you still have Eminem's stove?
No, God, that was so many apartments ago. Unfortunately not. I have Fred Durst's stove now.
I'm sorry that you had to downgrade.
I know. Yeah. It's an electric.
So we have some questions that have come in for our members that I am going to ask. Is there anything that anybody wants to talk about before I go to the member question?
I just wanted to add something, and I don't, Will, I hope you're comfortable with me adding this, but I did want to say, so throughout the course of production, we were asking Will to read that email from his dad, right? I mean, it's in there. And he always said no, always said no, always said no. After Alex and I had finished a cut of this and showed it to Will, I came back in town. I was living in England at the time, and I came back in town, and we had like a week, and I just reached out to Will to ask him one last time if he wanted to read his dad's email, and you said yes. And so he came over to my apartment, and we filmed this, and he read the email for the first time, and it was emotional. And it was a really well written email, but obviously, you know, it was a really emotional thing. And we had already finished the cut, so didn't feel it was necessary to put in the film. And Will, you know, it's a personal email for Will, and we felt it was best saved just for him and his dad. But all this to say, Will, I do think you came around somewhere to the point where you could read that. Like, you know, you were so adamantly saying no the entire time we were shooting, and then after you watched probably a couple cuts of of you know what we were working on, you were able to find some ability to read that final email. So I do think that says something.
Sure.
Okay, so I have two questions here that are about Roman, and does he know that he's in the film?
Yes.
He does. And he was secretly filmed at the bar, right?
Yeah, it was one of these, you know, shoot first, ask permission later. And he's actually a really nice guy. I've been in touch with him. We were gonna interview him actually, and he was all down to do an interview, and then COVID happened. This was like after we had kind of wrapped everything, because he disappeared again. We couldn't find him forever, and then we were able to finally reconnect with him. And he had moved to Arizona permanently, and he had started a new family. And unfortunately, his new wife passed away, had cancer, and he had a very small child with her. So he was now dealing with raising another baby, and COVID happened, and I tried to keep in touch with him, but he's kind of gone. He's disappeared again. But I hope he's seen it, and if not, you know, we'll find him again and show it to him.
There was supposed to be more interaction too. I don't know, Will, if you remembered it, or maybe if you've done this on the side, but you two talked about starting up some sort of a business together that night. And he also said that he had a gift for you that we were really holding on to finding out what happened with, but the mystery remains.
I tried texting him a bunch of times. So we had this, like, I mean, we wanted to keep some sort of a little bit of distance, and so we were using a Google Voice number. But like after meeting him in that bar, I was like, oh, here's my number. And I tried texting him several times, and it just, like, I think he got back to me once, and then it just kind of went away. It just went dark. It was weird.
He's had a lot of life happen to him.
One of the biggest mysteries of this film, I think, is if these stamps are worth as much as what Roman says they are, why does he leave them with Will and never follow up? Did you ever get an answer from him on why he would have left something so valuable with a stranger?
He didn't want his wife to have them. He and his wife were fighting, and he left the stamps with Will so his wife could do something with them.
And then why did he never follow up and try to get them back?
That's a question I don't know about. Like, I don't know why he never came back.
Will moved.
Right,
they had no contact info for each other.
There was a lot of time where he could have come back. And I think there was, you know, Will's roommate Stefan had said early in the documentary that he saw cops outside, and there was child protective services there. Although that might have been Luba's first husband, though, thinking back on it. But I don't know. The question is, the answer is I don't know. I don't know why. He seems like a very odd, eclectic kind of guy. So I don't try and pretend.
I mean, do you think that he ever would have tried to find you again if you hadn't did the work to try to find Roman and Luba? Do you think that he would have tried to find you again?
It seems like he didn't, you know. I mean, like we did not. I don't think we held back on being visible, right? You know, we weren't.
Well, you did say after you moved the first time, you did say that you finally registered your car in California and you put your name, or there's something about you put your name on your apartment, but you were able to register it in a different way. So basically there's no way for him to contact you or for him to find you. It was something like that. Like you got you registered your car, so you no longer had the same license plate, or so. I can't remember what it was, but I'll find the footage and put it online. But it was essentially like after your first move.
Look at it first. I don't know what you're.
It was after your first move. You said I changed my name on this document or something, and you re-registered your car, so there's no way he could find you now. But maybe you were just bullshitting. I don't know.
I don't know what that. I don't know what that was.
I'll put it online.
Okay, great.
Did you believe Roman's story that this was actually his own stamp collection that he had been working for decades to put together, or did you think that was more likely he had stolen them or got them in a trade or something?
They did not look like the kind of thing that someone had like pieced together themselves necessarily. You know, it felt like whatever he got it in, this was the form that he got them in.
Are you more interested in stamp collecting now that you have been through this whole process?
I definitely have a lot more kind of respect for it. Like every time we go to like a stamp show or something like that, and you see all these people like delicately putting away these like impressively valuable like pieces of paper into things. But do I personally want to get stamp collecting? No, that's not something that I'm into. Unfortunately.
Do you think, Will, that you would, if you were to encounter a similar situation of getting involved in this way with a stranger, that this experience would make you feel like you shouldn't, or would you still just be so curious that you had to?
It would really depend on the situation. Something as similar as this, I probably wouldn't. My wife would kill me if I just grabbed a bag from a stranger and held on to it for some period of time. Mainly because she'd be afraid that someone would try and shoot a documentary about it.
Speaking, to Alex and Joe, what do you think was the most difficult aspect of making this film?
Patience, probably. It was always exciting and fun when we were shooting. I mean, the stakeouts were a little boring, but there was always the anticipation that something might happen, and that kind of kept us going. But yeah, it was over a period of 5 years or however long it was. And there was a lot of time when there wasn't anything happening and we just didn't think it was ever going to get done. So we're like, we might have to drop this. And, it costs very little money to make, which means it could go on forever. But, if there's no story there, there's no point. So there was probably a couple of years in there where we just didn't shoot anything. And then something would happen and it would just kind of, production would start again. And every weekend we'd dedicate to this. And so, yeah, it was really just patience that there was a story here worth continuing to shoot.
I'll add in and say perseverance too. Like we shot this over such a long period of time that the movie, it died a couple of times. Or not died entirely, but was on life support because the reality of living is that we needed to have jobs and do other things. And
right.
We had a few brushes with some pretty big partnerships along the way of making this, but nothing that ever panned out. And so really we pushed this boulder up the hill. I don't want to say totally by ourselves, but we very much had to put our legwork into this to actually get it over the hill. So it was perseverance and dedication. And then at the end of it, finding a story in over 100 hours of footage, because this thing could have been 5 different documentaries easily.
Right.
There were so many other rabbit holes that we could have fallen into. The Bonnie Collins story, the Russian mob in general.
Did you feel like at times you might have to try to find some way to wrap the story up without finding Roman again and returning the stamps? Or was that always sort of, we can't finish this film until we find Roman?
I think we were, and this was going to be dicey. And Will, I don't even know if we've told you about this, but there was such a through line for me. Like, the emotional core of the story is Will's relationship with his dad. And the story is interesting in its own right. The plot of strange Russian $1 million stamps. What do you do? What's going on? But, when you give those to Will with Will's personal history, like the story becomes a lot more interesting. And so for me, the through line emotionally was always his relationship with his father, and always felt like that should be the ending. Like, Will, like, this was our kind of fantasy ending. Will gets a flight back to England and talks to his dad for the first time since he was 15, in person, or whatever it was. And I think we asked you a couple times, Will, if you'd be into that, if you'd be up for that. I think you said if we buy you a flight, you'd go to the door, but you can't promise anything, I think is how that ended. But yeah, we were always interested in doing that. If Roman never came back, we thought that would be satisfying. And whatever Will decided to do, if he got to as close as the door to his father's apartment or house or wherever he was living, and decided not to go in, that's an ending. If he decides to go in, that's an ending. So we had kind of planned that out as our backup.
And then Luba, that's when Luba and Roman suddenly reappeared, or that's when that's right. You had gone to talk to Will's former neighbor.
Right.
Oh, that was an accident. We had
and
gone
the
to
neighbor
shoot.
across the hall was like, "Oh, I know that dude, Roman."
We were actually there just shooting recreations. Only because the big permitted shoot that we had scheduled the day before got totally rained out in the middle of a 5-year-long drought in Los Angeles. So that was pure happenstance that we found that tip. At that point, we had nearly given up finding Roman. We had private investigators, multiple private investigators that couldn't find him, and nothing we were doing was turning over any stones. So yeah, we had given up hope at that point, and then it just fell into our laps.
Wow. So let's talk about where everybody can see this film. It's out now on streaming, right?
Yeah,
Yep.
pretty much everywhere where you can rent a movie. iTunes, Apple TV, Amazon Prime, Vudu, Xbox, Fandango now.
Are you going to be able to screen in theaters at all as like a hybrid release, or you're mostly doing streaming?
It's probably just streaming.
We did a virtual theatrical run with Lemley for the 2 weeks before it came out. But so yeah, we'll probably just do streaming. Unless you guys want to host an in-person screening, frankly. I mean, this movie plays great with an audience.
You know what? I'm going to leave that up to Rachel Blamer. She can work it out. When we have a new theatrical partner, she can put together a screening for you.
Nice.
I'd love to do that, actually. I think it would be fantastic for more people to see it. And I think our members, and I know so many people that would love it. Catch us up. What are the three of you doing now? Are you working on film projects, Joe and Alex?
We're doing some film projects, nothing like this. Well, sort of like this.
Well,
I guess.
something entirely like this. We're gonna turn this into a fiction feature film.
Yeah.
You are?
Yes.
Oh.
But also wanted to reach out to your viewers or whoever's watching this, to say, if you love this movie, contact us, because we'd love help doing this. We want this to be an indie thing, or it's going to have to be an indie thing. So Alex and I are looking to produce it, and we need writers, we need directors, we need.
Are you guys on social? What are your social handles?
William J. Saunders is mine.
And Alexander the Greer. But they can also reach out to the Penny Black movie, which is on
Okay.
Instagram.
ThePennyBlackMovie.com as well.
Will, who do you think should play you in this movie?
Oh, great question. There's no way I can answer that without sounding totally egotistical. So I'm going to leave that to someone else.
Brad Pitt, Viggo
Okay.
Mortensen.
Chris Evans.
Definitely Chris Evans.
Can you have like all the Marvel Chris's share the part? Like part of the movie's Chris Evans, parts.
It's like that was it
Like
that
that Dylan
documentary?
movie.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Kate
yeah,
Blanchett plays Will for a couple scenes.
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
Great. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, you guys, for joining me. Anything you wanted to add before we end this convo? No? It's such a fascinating movie, and I was really grateful to be able to see it. I've seen it twice. I saw it through Slam Dance the first time. So I really encourage all of our members, if you haven't seen it, to see it. And good luck to all of you with all your future projects.